Welcome back to Rewriting Romance, Modern Dating with Old School Wisdom, a space where we blend faith, psychology, and feminine wisdom to redefine what healthy, intentional dating looks like in today's world. I'm Mia, and today's episode, we're gonna get real and quick. But I don't want to get ahead of myself, so let's first recap. So far, we've established the foundation to resetting your dating in a healthier approach. And that's by understanding your dating intentions, setting boundaries, identifying what you want out of a partner, and starting to become a creature like no other. Today's topic, we'll be defining how we're showing up in dating. It's essentially the boundaries and feminine energy put into action. We're going to be diving into the rules 2 through 6 in the rules book, because these rules are game-changing. Because we're going to be discussing who initiates, how much we're giving, texting habits, who pays, and why pacing actually protects your peace and power. I'm also going to be sharing how my faith keeps shaping how I navigate all of these principles. Because to me, it's not just about these rules or structure, but it's more about that spiritual alignment. And yes, you're going to get the honest confessions, because let's be real, we've all broken these rules at least once or twice, or if you're like me, multiple times. But it's a deeper layer than just the dating habits or behaviors. Like I said, it's about the spiritual alignment. It's about how boundaries, it's not control, but more about stewardship. Stewardship that honors your peace, your energy, your heart. Because whenever we start dating out of faith instead of fear, we're going to start understanding that boundaries, it's not rejection, but a redirection of what it's actually made for us. So let's set the table. What are these rules? So, rule 2, don't talk to a man first and don't ask him to dance. Rule 3, don't stare at a man or talk too much. Rule 4, don't split the check. Let him pay for the date. Rule 6, always end the phone call first. So I know these rules sound a little bit outdated, but if we look a little closer, we can see that the root of these rules, they're actually timeless, because they establish discipline, confidence, and peace, which is all the things that we're talking about. So I don't want you to think that these rules are manipulative, but they're more setting a foundation of protective rhythm. They help you stay grounded in your feminine energy, and instead of slipping into that performance energy. And biblically speaking, Proverbs 4:23 says, above all, guard your heart, for everything you do flows through it. So these principles are exactly that. It's about guarding your heart and not hardening it. So let's start with rule 2 and 3. The ones that say, don't initiate the first conversation or move, and don't talk too much. So at a glance, again, they do sound outdated and maybe a little bit passive. But if we do look deeper, these rules are more about energy stewardship, knowing when to lead and when to lean back. We do live in a culture that tells us women that to go after what we want, and I'm all for that, but not when it comes to our dating and our romantic relationships and our marriage. You know, our cultural lie today is that women, you're okay, text first, pursue, keep the energy alive. And to be honest, here's the actual cold hard truth. When you operate out of true feminine energy, you understand that true connection does not come from pursuit. It actually comes from your presence. So keep in mind, that we do not want to do anything that could interfere from the natural order of things. And what do I mean by that? Well, if let's say you're out dancing at a club or something, I don't know, a bar, and you ask the cute guy to go dance with you. Or you're at a coffee shop or some social setting and you start talking to this really cute guy, and then you ask him for his number, and then you ask him on a date later on. You're going to start feeling that you're constantly putting all of this energy and you're not getting this attention back. And it's going to drain you. And you're going to constantly be pursuing and making the first move. And in all reality, you're just going to end up getting hurt in the process. Because if he did not initiate that first move, it's because one, he probably didn't see you, or you're just making it too easy. So let the men pursue you. Let them do what they're meant to do. Feminine presence is a quiet confidence that says, I'm here, I'm whole, and I'm not performing for your attention. And if being fully grounded in your worth without needing convincing of anyone to choose you, you don't want to be the pick-me girl. So when you're not chasing, you're going to start attracting. And the book does make a very valid point here. If we refuse to accept that men and women are different romantically, even though they may be equal professionally, you will start behaving like a man. And that will eventually drive them all away. Such forwardness is very risky, and most of us have seen it in action. I've seen it in action. I've experienced it myself. So, because remember, men who are emotionally available and spiritually aligned don't need to be pursued. Again, when they're emotionally stable and spiritually aligned, they don't need to be pursued. Okay? Because they are drawn more to your peace and not that pressure. So, this really goes into rule 3, which points out about not staring at a man for too long. Let him look at you. So if you're walking and you see that cute guy and you want his attention, but he's not looking, keep walking. Keep walking, girl. You're going to get somebody else's attention. And that is fine. And then say you do end up getting this date from the cute guy that you saw at a coffee shop or whatever. On that first date, make sure that you're not staring romantically into his eyes, because this is only going to make him feel crowded and self-conscious. So really restrain yourself and practice that self-control and discipline that we've been talking about. You want him to try and get your attention. So that is the goal. Because men fall in love with essence, not with anything that you're saying in particular, because we know how much men actually listen to us. Men are actually very simple creatures. So keep your conversations light and very mysterious. And that's where faith intertwines with our femininity. You can want love, but wait in that grace. And you can want that connection, but trust that what is meant for you will be for you. Stillness doesn't mean to do nothing. It just means do less. Do less of what drains your power and more of what preserves your peace. Think of it like this. When you plant a seed, you're not digging every single day to see if it's growing. You're going to water it, you're going to nurture it, and you're going to trust the process. And that's faith. And that's feminine power. So, how do we embody rules 2 and 3? Not playing hard to get, but it's being hard to shake. Because when you're rooted in peace, you become magnetic. All right. Let's talk about rule 4. Who pays? Don't split the bill. Let him pay for the date. And this rule, it sparks debate, and especially in today's modern world. But it's not about the money, so don't think about it like that. Think it more about energy. When a man offers to pay, it's symbolic of his leadership. It's him stepping into his masculine role of giving, initiating, of protecting. And when you allow this, you're not being passive, you're just receiving. You're being receptive. But part of feminine strength is trusting provision. So for instance, I struggled in this, and I'm still kind of struggling in it. It's hard. I don't know what is it programmed into my brain to think that I need to be conscious of that guy's like money, or that, I can just tell him that I can pay for myself. Like, honestly, if you're paying for yourself, like that's just a hangout. That's not like a real date, to be honest, like in all reality. But I struggled with this so much. Thankfully, I have had, even in my most masculine energy era, I have had guys that have always paid for me and always initiated that, but I've always felt very uncomfortable. And let's look at my last relationship. Oof. So that one, I was very cautious about his finance because he was just starting from scratch, and I know he had a lot of like expenses and everything. So I didn't want to be just another burden, another expense for him. So I took care of a lot of the things. Like very, very few moments did he like pay for my meal. And if he did, I would pay for something else. And so, yeah, I made more money and I knew that. So I just took it as an initiative that I needed to be providing for that relationship. And that drained me and I didn't feel valued. So obviously he's my ex. So we know how that kind of ended there. And even biblically, men are called to lead and provide. It's not about dependency. It's more about that alignment. So the Bible states that men's responsibility is to provide for his family. 1 Timothy 5:8 says, "But if anyone does not provide for his relatives, especially for members of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever." The provision of one's own family is a spiritual issue of the utmost importance. Failure to live this is also just a failure to your faith and respecting the gospel. The role is also tied into the husband's love with Ephesians 5. And let's focus specifically on Ephesians 5:25, where it says, "Husbands, love your wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her." This instructs husbands to nourish and cherish their wife, just as Christ nourished the church. And beyond that material provision, the Bible also emphasizes that this support is a duty to his family and his family's overall well-being and faith. So providing, it's not just a material support, but also about a spiritual and emotional well-being, as seen and instructed for the husband to live with their wives in understanding this way. So the role is a fundamental part of a man's responsibility, and the ability for him to provide is honestly a blessing. Now, I know that in today's economy, that doesn't seem very realistic. So let's look into that. What does it look like in today's modern economy for a man to provide? Obviously, for him to be the sole provider of a family is like very, very small chances he needs to be making a lot of money for you to be staying at home and taking care of your kids. But so it's more about not going 50-50. It's more about him being able to provide for majority of the expenses when it's the mortgage, and just those higher expenses. Now, you obviously are going to help out with, groceries, the utilities, gas, those things that help support. So, there's a balance there, but not 50-50. Now, if you want to be a stay-at-home mom and you're a planner like me, I've tried to intentionally put myself in a position that I can do just that. right? So I work in a 100% remote job that gives me a lot of flexibility. Still not the flexibility that I want. So I am setting myself in future or professionalism, maybe starting a business to set myself up so I can have the flexibility. But I've also thought about investments, and I have a good chunk of stuff, you know, it set up for my future family's wealth, because I want to be able to be at home and have the luxury for that, but also being able to help support my family. So it's something that is very crucial that you need to discuss if you are in a very serious relationship and have discussed marriage. These are the things that you need to be having conversations with, because this is very important for you guys to align with. And if you don't, you need to figure that out before you tie the knot. So when you let him lead in these small ways, you're actually affirming a divine design that honors both roles. And keep in mind that you are equal in a partnership, but you guys have each different types of roles to fulfill. So rule 5, let's go ahead and move to that. It says, don't call him or rarely return his calls. And in today's world, it's more about the texting. And let's be honest, we all struggle in this aspect, right? We have the urge to double text, to over explain, to check our phones every 5 minutes. The struggle be real. So don't over text, don't over explain, and don't overstay your presence. You don't have to be cold either, just controlled. But here's the truth. A man that wants you, he will pursue you and will pursue that clarity, not that convenience. Because when you're emotionally grounded, you don't chase validation. You invite consistency. And when a man values you, he will find the way to connect with you. And if he doesn't, well, that's your answer. And again, God is not the author of confusion, so he is not going to give you that confusion. He will give you that peace and that clarity. That's what he will bring to you. So don't be surprised if he's not texting you a week or two after that first date. You have to remember that he has a life before you, so he's probably busy or probably dating other women, as you should too. You're going to be busy and you should be dating too. So give him space and do not text him, okay? Let him come to you. And for example, recently I've gone on a few dates and, we've texted before the date about 2 to 3 weeks before that first date. Everything was fine. I had a lot of fun. They were really great guys. And it's not that I didn't enjoy the day. I just wasn't feeling that spark or connection. But I have a rule of giving it three dates, and you should too. And they didn't text after that first date, completely ghosted. And I was like, okay, well, if you weren't feeling it, just let me know that. I would have understood and respected that. But I would have honored and respected even more if you're just upfront. That's the honorable thing to do as a man. It's to be upfront and real. Same thing with you ladies. If you're not feeling it, don't ghost him. Be upfront. Be real. I'm not interested. I'm not feeling it. Okay? It's going to be a sting at first of rejection, but it's going to give that clarity because it's worse living in confusion and the not knowing. So when I learned to slow down and not match that masculine energy of pursuit, I realized something. God will never give you peace about chasing what isn't yours. Okay? So God will not provide a sense of peace or contentment of actions that are not aligned to his will or purpose of the person that he has meant for you. If we start to chase that worldly or personal desire, that's not the peace that he has for us. That is not the divine guidance. It just ultimately will feel very unfulfilled. So let's break it down. When we lack peace, we are feeling constantly in a place of emptiness, frustration, and unrest. when we are pursuing a goal that is not spiritually aligned for us. It's probably just a spiritual sign that that is not where we need to go. And it's just being very unguided. So what do we need to do? Is redirect those goals, right? So that feeling of being stuck or restlessness, it just could be God's way of redirecting you towards a better path or purpose that he has aligned for you. It's that, discernment that he's giving you. So let's focus on that inner peace, because true peace is a gift that comes from a relationship with the higher power and not from the external circumstances or possessions. So it's not those things that we think that we want and we think that we know is right for us. That will not give us peace, because he is glorious and he knows what is meant for you, and he already has his plan ready for you. So trust and surrender your personal desires to God, because he does have a plan, and you need to trust that plan, even when it involves letting go of something that you thought that you wanted. Because the Bible encourages pursuing peace and holiness. In Hebrews 12:14, pursue peace with everyone and holiness. Without it, no one will ever see the Lord. Holiness is clearly expected from all us Christians. And this is not a salvation through works, but this is the salvation through the death of Christ. Holy living is a part of perseverance. So let's talk about anxiety. Philippians 4:6-7 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving that lets the requests be made known to God." Basically, this advises us against being anxious and about giving that to God and asking for his request and through prayer of that peace, because that is God's promise, is his peace of guarding your heart and mind. So trust in God's plan. And again, Proverbs 3:5-6 is a reminder to lean in our not in our understanding, but to acknowledge God in all his ways, for he will be the one that directs you through your paths. So it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lead it in your own understanding. In your ways, acknowledge him and he will make your path straight. And I cannot stress that enough. So pacing is a form of power. It shows you that you trust what is meant for you and that you value the man that will be meant for you, and you will respect that rhythm. So these rules about not approaching first, talking too much, and ending the call first, or not overstaying your presence, I'll just point to a deeper truth. Feminine restraint is magnetic. Because we live in a culture that glorifies the oversharing, the chasing, the instant gratification, and everything's about urgency. It's about reply now, post now, make it happen. But a woman that holds to her peace and her pace and her mystery, she becomes the exception in a world of excess. Isn't that awesome? And it's not arrogance, it's elegance, because elegance is rooted from discipline, is knowing when to speak and when to simply be. The feminine spirit doesn't chase, she receives. She doesn't demand attention, she commands it quietly through her presence. And honestly, as a natural social being, I struggle in that. I struggle in the oversharing and the over talking too much, especially on those few dates. And it's something that I've been very mindful and actively working on in every single date that I have. I'm like, oop, Mia, you're saying too much. Oop, Mia, nope, it's only the second date. This is too deep of a conversation. So I've been practicing more of my active listening, saying less, and, if I do say something very short, and then I just bring it back to them. because stillness gives him more room to lead. And when you always initiate, always check in, always fill in that quiet gap, you just rob that man from the opportunity to rise. And a healthy masculine man wants to rise. Men fall in love in silence, in peace. He wants to feel that he's pursuing something rare, a woman who is warm, but not waiting, that's inviting, but not available to everyone. And restraint isn't rejection, it's more refinement. It's confidence that whispers, I know what I bring to the table, and I don't need an audition for it. Because your value isn't proven through performance, it's revealed through your presence and your peace. Even in faith, this principle holds very true. Let's look at scripture in Exodus 14:14. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent. Trust in God to act on your behalf in overwhelming moments. Don't try to fight your own battles, but have faith and stay calm. It's saying that you are trusting things in Him, that you trust your worth, that you trust what is meant for you will be for you. That the essence of the divine feminine confidence is not striving, but it's shining. Not chasing love, but becoming love. Because when you are grounded in peace, confidence in your calling, and secure in your mystery, you stop being the other option. You start becoming the standard. So let's be real. I have broken all of these rules multiple times. I've texted too soon, talked too much, I've overshared, overgave, and I've justified it all in the name of effort. And every single time, God has used these opportunities to reveal something deep in me. And where I was seeking validation instead of connection, or control instead of trust. And I will be honest, this spiritual discernment hasn't happened my whole life, or it's been happening for years or anything like that. It's been in the last few months. And during those times that I was doing all these things and God was trying to share with me like these realizations or reveal these things, it came from it was that little voice in my head, like that voice of reasoning that you hear all the time, and then you start negotiating with it because your pride is trying to tell you something else. Yeah, that's God. That's God giving you discernment. So when I started to really dive into my relationship with God and work in it and read His word and let Him pour into me, I started to understand what discernment was and starting to be more obedient and started to pray and started to ask Him and that to guide me in everything that I do to make sure that I'm honoring Him and that I make sure that I'm following the path that He has laid down for me. That's when things started to really, really start making a lot more clear, and I started to really make a huge shift. It was a huge spiritual shift. And my presence today is so different than it even was 2 months ago. So, if you do break these rules, give yourself grace. This isn't about being perfect, okay? It's just more about being aware and progression, because we are work in progress. We're not perfect. And you don't need to fail the test and then never try it again. Retake the test, but do it with wisdom next time and keep going and keep failing and keep going back up, right? It builds character. It builds confidence. So, what have we learned in rules 2-6? It's simple and it's transformative, but it's that boundaries are love. They're not walls. They're doors that lead into peace. They don't shut people out. They filter those that are not deserving of your time and that are not meant for you. Boundaries protect your time, your energy, and your spirit. The things that most are sacred to a woman, and it's sacred for her to walk with purpose. They're not about control, they're about clarity. And clarity is one of the purest forms of self-respect. And when you have these boundaries, you're not saying that you don't need anyone. You're just saying, I know who I am, and I'm not willing to negotiate anymore. Because love, real love, that nourishes and flourishes in respect. And respect starts with how you treat yourself. So honor your boundaries, because your boundaries do allow you to stay in that feminine energy for openness, calmness, and being grounded, rather than being anxious and reactive and just overgiving, because they give you space to breathe, to discern, and to observe how you show up without losing yourself. And here's the truth that most of us women don't want to realize, and that's that real men are drawn to peace and not pressure. When you hold your standards with grace, you are creating that safety, and not just for yourself, but for the relationship that you're in or to come. Because the right man doesn't want to compete with chaos. He wants to complement with your calmness. And the more that you anchor yourself in faith, the easier it becomes to trust that you don't have to chase what you already know that is not meant for you. You can rest knowing that God doesn't operate in confusion. Again, he's not the author of confusion, but he operates in that alignment and that clarity and that peace. And if something feels forced, frantic, or one-sided, your answer is clear. It's not from him. Move on. Set your boundaries. Hold your standards. Honor yourself. And let your peace speak louder than your fear. Because at the end of the day, boundaries do not push love away. They prepare you to receive the kind that was always meant for you, the one that God has created for you. All right. So, rules 2 through 6 sound old, but they're timeless rules that are about preserving your peace and setting your standards. The modern woman can still be warm, approachable, and faithful while still being firm about what she's not willing to accept. So, as you go into this week, I really want you to think and remember that boundaries are not walls. They're doors. Doors that open only for what's meant for you and close for everything that isn't. All right, so next week, we're going to be taking things up a notch. We're going to be talking about mystery and momentum, rules 7 through 9, that keep him hooked. So we'll be unpacking how to build attraction without losing yourself, and how to keep that spark alive while staying grounded in faith. And spoiler, it's not about playing games. It's more about playing it smart. So thanks again for joining on another episode of Free Writing Romance. And if this episode spoke to you, please go ahead and share it. And also subscribe to my YouTube channel for those weekly updates in episodes. And don't forget to follow on Instagram and TikTok, as I will be doing daily updates on truths and just based faith wisdom. And until next time, stay grounded in faith, rooted in grace, and as always, becoming the woman that God created you to be.